The world changed in the blink of an eye. Instead of a slow, gradual warming, an unexpected ice age gripped the earth. Within days, civilization was frozen solid, caught completely unprepared for such a drastic shift. People, lacking the skills and tools to survive the extreme cold, perished. The once accessible world had transformed into a brutal, unforgiving wasteland where resources became more precious than gold, driving survivors to desperate measures. A lone figure trekked across the unforgiving landscape, passing by a frozen corpse without a second glance. This individual, a man, paused to catch his breath, removing his protective gear to survey his surroundings. He noted the untouched nature of the area and lamented the scarcity of food and fuel, once readily available. He observed a city encased in ice below, its thick frozen layer seemingly offering a degree of safety. Suddenly, a thunderous roar echoed through the air, alarming the man. Fearing an earthquake, he cursed as the ice beneath his feet shattered, sending him plummeting into the abyss. He reflected on the fragility of human civilization, easily broken like the ice itself. Desperately, he tried to arrest his fall with an ice axe, praying it would hold. Despite his best efforts, the ice axe failed to find purchase, and he continued his descent, bracing for a fatal impact. Luckily, he landed on the snow-covered roof of a building, narrowly avoiding a deadly encounter with the unforgiving ice. As he tried to recall a comforting proverb about surviving disaster, a horrifying sight stopped him in his tracks. A creature with multiple eyes and a fanged grin, a predator known as a white skin that hunted humans, stood before him. Terror lending speed to his steps, the man fled, acknowledging the fleeting nature of his luck. As the white skin closed in on its prey, a translucent, slug-like creature descended from the ice ceiling above. Sharp stalactites, dislodged by some unseen force, rained down on the unsuspecting white skin, piercing its head and killing it instantly. The man, momentarily safe, watched in disbelief. He wondered if the commotion had caused the stalactites to fall or if something else had intervened. His relief was short-lived as the concrete roof beneath him began to crumble. With a cry of terror, he realized the gravity of his situation just as the roof gave way, burying him under a cascade of snow and debris. Only a lone hand remained visible, a testament to the unforgiving nature of this frozen world. As the man lay buried under the snow, the translucent slug from before approached, its strange eyes glowing as it examined his hand. The creature excreted a glowing nerve-like appendage from its mouth, touching it to the man's exposed skin. Suddenly, the man's eyes sprang open, glowing the same eerie color as the slug. He looked around, disoriented, his left eye now an unnatural hue while his right eye remained normal. He questioned what had happened, attributing his strange experience to a daydream. Unaware of the glowing blue veins pulsing on the back of his neck, he decided to head home, his attention caught by a discarded chocolate bar. At least he wouldn't return empty-handed, he mused. Later, standing before a tall building, he pried open a manhole cover, explaining that the frozen cityscape forced him to use this passage as his only route home. He descended into the darkness, wondering how long this way of life would last. At the bottom, he found a group of people huddled together. The atmosphere inside the building was as oppressive as the frozen wasteland outside. Their gazes followed him, cold and suspicious. He knew that many people had been trapped in this building when disaster struck, and with dwindling supplies, he dreaded to think what they might do to survive. Hurrying past them, he reminded himself that in this new world, even basic human decency was a luxury no one could afford. Relieved to see that the usual patrol was absent, he made his way home, eager to see his girlfriend. He knocked on a door, startled when it flew open instantly to reveal Xiaoming, his girlfriend. He began to admonish her for not being more careful about security but was cut off by a hug. Xiaoming, beaming up at him, declared that she had simply wanted to see him as quickly as possible. Flustered, he admitted that he was happy to see her too but reminded her to always lock the door. Xiaoming, pouting, questioned if a locked door was more important than his girlfriend. He quickly presented her with the chocolate bar, prompting a delighted squeal. Xiaoming showered him with hugs and kisses, proclaiming him the best boyfriend ever. He blushed crimson under her enthusiastic affection. Days later, the man, known as Mo, sat staring into the dwindling flames of the fireplace, his stomach gnawing with hunger. He hadn't found decent food in days. He eyed the seeds he had collected, wondering if they should sacrifice their future for a single meal. The sprouts he had planted offered little hope, but eating the seeds meant abandoning all hope of sustainable sustenance. He glanced at his backpack, a grim reminder of the dwindling resources and the toll it was taking on everyone. He pulled out a piece of strange-looking meat, wondering if the monsters they hunted could offer a solution to their hunger. He tossed it into the fire, deciding it was too risky. At least the monster fat burned well, he thought, a small comfort in their frozen world. He glanced at a clock, startled to realize it was Valentine's Day. He had completely forgotten. He went to find Xiaoming to apologize, but she was gone. Puzzled, he heard a knock on the door, their prearranged signal. Why was she outside? He wondered as he opened the door. Before he could speak, a baseball bat slammed into his face, sending him flying backwards. He crashed to the floor, blood gushing from his nose, his attacker looming over him. "Merry Christmas, brother Mo," the man sneered, Xiaoming clinging to his arm. Mo stared up in disbelief. "Why," he choked out, "why betray me?" Xiaoming glared at him, her face a mask of icy fury. "You think you can fool me with a single chocolate bar," she spat. Our hero couldn't believe Xiaoming was more upset about the lack of chocolate than his near-death experience. Xiaoming, sensing his disbelief, accused him of hoarding food and lying to her, questioning his loyalty. Our hero's attempts to reason with her were met with scorn. Just then, a man named Lu Delong approached, a menacing golf club in hand. He sneered at our hero, offering unsolicited advice about the harsh realities of their post-apocalyptic world. This was no longer a civilized society, he explained, but a brutal hierarchy where the strong preyed on the weak. He mocked our hero's inability to provide for his girlfriend, implying that no woman would willingly stay with a man who couldn't even offer basic sustenance. Lu Delong demanded our hero's food. Our hero, refusing to back down, challenged him, asking what he had to offer in return. Lu Delong's response was swift and brutal. He smashed his golf club into our hero's leg, breaking it instantly. Another blow caught our hero in the face, shattering teeth and bone. Our hero cried out in pain as his arm snapped under the force of the club. Lu Delong and his men continued their merciless assault, reveling in our hero's agony as blood splattered across the floor. Crouching beside the barely conscious our hero, Lu Delong casually remarked that even weaklings had their uses, their flesh providing sustenance for the strong. He ordered his men to fetch a knife. As our hero slipped towards unconsciousness, Lu Delong's grinning face, illuminated by the flickering lights, was the last thing he saw. He reflected bitterly that this was the ending he had feared most, praying for another chance at life, a chance to survive. Suddenly, everything went dark. Then, just as abruptly, our hero found himself seated at an office desk. He bolted upright, his blue eyes wide with confusion. He shouted for Lu Delong, his voice echoing in the silence. He examined his body, surprised to find himself whole and unharmed. He was dead, wasn't he? What was going on? Then it hit him. He was back. Back to a time before the ice, before the world had fallen apart. He had 28 hours until the global ice age, 28 hours to change everything. The city around him buzzed with oblivious life. Protests raged in Queens, oblivious to the impending doom. Elites partied in Manhattan, their wealth offering no protection from what was to come. It was July 14th, a day like any other, except for one man who knew the truth. As our hero walked, he looked up at the sky, noticing the shimmering aurora borealis, a harbinger of the coming freeze. His phone rang, and he knew instantly who it was. Xiaoming. He recalled her words, her declaration that she was but a weak woman who needed the protection of a strong man. He had been blinded by her beauty, he realized, fooled by her act. Not this time. This time, things would be different. He answered the phone, his voice cold and resolute. Xiaoming, unaware of his inner turmoil, chattered excitedly about the aurora, asking if he was seeing it too. She was at a club, she explained, and needed money because her credit card was maxed out. Upon our hero's sudden declaration to end their relationship and his command that she should never contact him again, Seeing was taken aback. As she questioned his abrupt decision, our hero cut off the call, erasing her contact details from his phone. While walking away, our hero pondered the implications of his second chance, vowing that women like Seeing, who had once harmed him, would suffer in the forthcoming Ice Age. Our hero found himself in Brooklyn, with just 2 minutes remaining until July 14th. Reflecting on his previous life, which he now referred to as the previous loop, he recognized the urgency to prepare for the rapidly approaching freeze. The temperature was set to plummet to freezing point within 24 hours before the Ice Age, leaving less than 28 hours until the world would be engulfed in ice. Although it seemed like ample time, our hero understood that the falling temperatures would soon trigger widespread panic and chaos in an already unstable society. Realizing he had only an hour to gather supplies and arm himself for the impending disorder, our hero considered acquiring firearms for protection. As he walked, he passed a police car, and the officer inside, suspicious of our hero's late-night wandering, decided to follow him. The senior officer ordered our hero to stop and raise his hands, while another officer approached as backup. The rookie officer nervously informed his colleagues that they had encountered a suspected robber on 4th Avenue. Cursing his luck, our hero explained that he was simply holding his phone. He needed to start a timer and inwardly fumed at the wasted time. Hoping for a quick release, our hero complied with the officer's instructions, even as the senior officer cautioned the rookie to be careful. The rookie, visibly frightened, asked our hero about his bag's contents. As our hero reached for his tablet to show them, the panicked rookie mistook it for a weapon and fired. The bullet hurtled towards our hero, who was alarmed by the sudden turn of events. With thoughts of his second chance and a fierce determination to survive, our hero's eyes flashed with energy. Time seemed to decelerate, allowing him to see the bullet's slow-motion approach. Astonished by this newfound ability, our hero barely evaded the bullet by sidestepping. Realizing it wasn't an illusion, he berated the rookie for shooting a taxpayer, all while continuing to emit powerful energy. Our hero declared that he couldn't waste time on the foolish officer. As the bullet casings from the rookie's shots slowly fell to the ground, they began to freeze upon contact. Our hero deftly dodged the second bullet and launched himself at the rookie, delivering a punch so powerful that it sent the officer's tooth flying and slammed him against a pole before he crashed to the ground, severely injured. The sight horrified the senior officer, who trembled in fear. The master officer, eyes wide with terror, saw the mangled body of the rookie on the ground. He fell to his knees, desperately asking our hero what he had done to the rookie and who or what our hero was. Our hero, still radiating intense energy, continued to approach, his left eye glowing ominously. He confessed that he was unsure himself. The streets were eerily silent as the master officer radioed the command center, reporting an officer down and a suspect on the loose, who had also taken a police gun. He repeated his report, stunned by the day's unbelievable events. Meanwhile, our hero sprinted at incredible speed toward his apartment. Once inside, he sat in the living room, his mind racing over the recent events. Horrified, he questioned the reality of what had transpired and his newfound abilities. Contemplating the gun in his hand, our hero wondered if he should test his powers again. He stood before a mirror, aimed the gun at his reflection, and fired. Activating his left eye, he moved at blinding speed to catch the bullet with his bare hand. Ecstatic, he realized he had indeed developed superpowers. Observing the frost forming on his body without any visible ice, our hero speculated that his high-speed movements caused the effect, akin to a supersonic airplane. He concluded that his power was related to speed. Although it wasn't a particularly unique ability, he felt it would give him an edge in the approaching doomsday. Clenching his fist, our hero affirmed that this power would keep him one step ahead. A sudden knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Surprised to see his landlady, Mrs. Fong, our hero quickly hid the gun. Unaware of the weapon, Mrs. Fong inquired about the gunshot sound she had heard. Our hero awkwardly explained that it was from the TV, blaming a faulty remote. Mrs. Fong, concerned about recent supermarket robberies, advised our hero to take care of his health and not work too much overtime. Thanking her, our hero closed the door, feeling astonished and refocusing on his survival plan. Recalling Mrs. Fong's mention of the nearby supermarket, our hero decided it was the perfect place to gather supplies. Grinning sinisterly, he resolved to stock up. Our hero months later, a cashier girl yawned as she worked. On the CCTV, our hero could be seen standing in front of the racks. 24 seconds later, he began his preparations. A blurry image of our hero was captured on the CCTV as he ran through the store. Meanwhile, the girl behind the cash register yawned, fighting off fatigue as the clock ticked past midnight. Her drowsiness was abruptly interrupted when a long receipt unexpectedly printed out from the register in front of her. Puzzled, she examined the receipt, wondering if a transaction had just occurred. At the bottom of the receipt, a handwritten note apologized and urged her not to be afraid, advising her to go home quickly and stay safe. Bewildered by this strange message, the girl remained unaware that two armed men had just entered the building. As she grumbled about the recent robbery, oblivious to the new threat, the men brandished their guns and demanded money. One of them, impatient and agitated, urged her to hurry while hurling insults. Outside, a mysterious figure with pale skin approached the building. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted, and the man's gun began to freeze. Both men noticed the sudden cold and turned to see the white-skinned figure, covered in multiple eyes and mouths, looming in the doorway. Panicked, one man started firing his gun at the creature, followed by his companion. Despite their efforts, the creature remained unfazed, prompting one of the men to declare it invincible. In a horrifying turn, the white-skinned entity grabbed one of the men, tearing the skin from his head while the other could only watch in terror. As the girl behind the counter trembled, she managed to record the gruesome scene on her phone. In another part of the building, an old security guard watched the live footage with a younger colleague, who explained that such violent content had become popular online. Their discussion was interrupted by a red alert on the younger guard's phone, indicating an emergency message from the government. The alarm blared, capturing the attention of all citizens. Our hero, having returned to his apartment, heard the alarm and the announcement from the Department of Homeland Security and Logistics. Anxious, he realized the severity of the situation. The broadcast warned of an unexplained cold wave hitting the city, instructing residents to close their doors and windows, stay warm, and avoid going outside. The cold wave had already reached Brooklyn, and the announcement continued, emphasizing the urgency of the situation. Old Joe, the seasoned security guard, speculated about the seriousness of the government's involvement, while the younger guard dismissed it as unusual weather patterns. Amidst the ongoing announcements, a female doctor casually smoked in her laboratory, and our hero worked diligently in his room, hoping for no further complications. Elsewhere, a gang tortured a tied-up man, his face swollen and bleeding as their leader questioned him. Despite his battered state, the man insisted he knew nothing. The leader, who seemed universally adored, chuckled when he heard the man claim ignorance. Lou Delon, as he was known, produced a photograph showing the man with an unconscious, naked woman on a bed. Confronting the man about the image, he accused him of the audacious act of drugging the boss's daughter. Terrified, the man stammered, pleading his innocence. Lou Delon, unfazed, pulled out a knife, crouched down, and advised the man to abandon hope, suggesting only divine mercy could save him now. Terror filled the man's eyes as Lou grabbed his hand, placing it flat on the floor. The sickening sound of the knife cutting through flesh was soon accompanied by splattering blood. Lou, inspecting an organizer, counted 6 neatly lined up fingers, satisfied there were no mistakes. As his men stuffed the man's body into a bag, they queried Lou about their next step. Lou decreed the sin of lust should be punished by fire, noting the apartment had a boiler. The men followed orders, throwing the bag into the boiler. One muttered a wish for the man to rest in peace, and as the boiler door closed, he remarked on its old state, wondering if it would explode under the strain. His partner dismissed the concern, urging silence as Lou awaited them. Suddenly, the boiler exploded, hurling one of the men across the room. The other, helping his partner up, scolded him for being a jinx. Both were horrified as a huge creature's shadow loomed over them. Meanwhile, our hero, engrossed in drilling screws, completed a frame for cultivating crops. Sitting on the floor, he assessed his supplies, realizing that while they might last a while, they were not sufficient for the long term. Envisioning a self-sufficient survival room, our hero knew sustainable resources were essential. Noting the time, he realized the freezing phenomenon had persisted for nearly an hour, prompting him to accelerate his efforts as every moment counted. Our hero's focus was interrupted by a knock at the door. Cautiously opening it, he recognized Old Joe and a younger security guard. They expressed regret for the disturbance, explaining that the broadcast had announced a sudden temperature drop, but the heating system was broken. Concerned people might not notice at night, they were warning everyone to stay safe. Our hero, recalling a similar incident where the heating had failed and wasn't fixed in time, emphasized they couldn't afford to repeat the mistake. He asked old Joe to take him to see the malfunction. Our hero, confident in his ability to fix the boiler, assured old Joe he could handle it. Old Joe agreed it would be beneficial, so our hero closed his apartment door and followed him. As they ascended the staircase, old Joe corrected our hero's direction, explaining that the boiler room was actually in the basement, not upstairs. Our hero was skeptical, recalling Mrs. Fong mentioning the boiler room was upstairs due to its illegal status, but he conceded he might be mistaken. Descending to the basement, they found 2 security officers shivering, and Mrs. Fong complaining about the cold. Our hero noted the unusual appearance of the smoke, which resembled cold air. He began working on the boiler, and after some time, declared it fixed. However, he noticed a blue liquid on his hand from the valve, recognizing it instantly. He warned the security officers to wait. Suddenly, 2 massive, white-skinned arms emerged behind the younger security officer, who was unaware. The white-skinned creature crushed the officer's head with its hands, boasting about its regenerating fingers as it fed on the body. Blood sprayed everywhere as old Joe, horrified, demanded to know what the creature was. Our hero, equally shocked, tried to comprehend the presence of the white skin there. The creature then turned its attention to old Joe, ready to crush his head. Our hero, seeing the imminent danger, activated his skill and quickly grabbed old Joe. They ducked, narrowly evading the creature's deadly grip. Our hero initiated a sprint away, noting how close old Joe had come to losing his head. As they ran, our hero was relieved to see the exit door still open, thinking he could escape if he ran full speed. But to his dismay, the white-skinned creature was hot on his heels, keeping up with his speed. Our hero cursed, wondering how it could maintain such a pace. The creature was perilously close, ready to tear his head off. Wondering if his slower speed was due to carrying Fatty, our hero made a swift decision. He glanced at the door and threw Fatty outside. Fatty was shocked by the sudden turn of events as he landed outside the door. With his hands now free, our hero's reflexes kicked in, allowing him to dodge the monster's ground-shattering attack. Observing the situation, our hero noticed the monster seemed connected to Fatty, though he couldn't understand why. He needed to recap the initial events. When he held onto Fatty, the monster caught up to him, but without Fatty, our hero outran it. As the monster prepared another attack, our hero quickly dodged and pondered the situation. The condition causing his ability to be ineffective was not the monster but Fatty. When he threw Fatty, a strange energy appeared when his ability was activated. Scanning his surroundings, our hero wondered about the connection between the energy and the pebbles scattered around. Suddenly, a realization struck him. In his past life, humans had no chance against these monsters, prompting a survival instinct to flee. But now, things were different. If his guess was correct, prey could become hunters. Clutching a rock, our hero prepared a massive attack. Charging up his ability, he swung powerfully, obliterating the monster. His guess was right, his ability could only affect targets contaminated by energy. Smirking, he realized he could accelerate these contaminated objects, transforming even a small stone into a powerful projectile like an electromagnetic cannon. A blue liquid, resembling blood, dripped from his eye. Confused, our hero wondered what was happening. Suddenly, he collapsed, blood spilling from his mouth. As he lay on the floor, feeling unbearably cold, he saw Fatty approaching and was thankful he was okay. Fatty, whose real name was Joe, urged our hero not to close his eyes. Later, our hero awoke in a different location, surrounded by unfamiliar faces. They mentioned the strong winds outside preventing them from going to the hospital and that the main gate was frozen due to the blizzard. Joe instructed them to block the wind and turn on the heating in the security room. A girl speculated that our hero might be poisoned, wondering what had happened in the basement. Our hero, feeling extremely cold, tried to keep his eyes open but struggled against the urge to sleep. Upon opening his eyes again, he found himself in another room, where Mrs. Fong instructed Joe to find Doctor upstairs. Moments later, someone else entered the room, urging our hero to hang on as they were almost there. In yet another location, a new character told Doctor to leave our hero and check outside due to the chaos. Our hero's extreme coldness led Doctor to marvel at his survival, considering the possibility that our hero might be cryogenic. A recording documented our hero's condition, a male, aged 20 to 25, presenting with suspected poisoning symptoms, currently in a coma. His vital signs were abnormal, with a body temperature around 10 degrees Celsius, yet his pulse and nerve reflexes remained normal, which was remarkable. Blood separation revealed blue impurities post-centrifugation, an unprecedented finding. Analysis of the blood sample would take time, so the observer planned to continue monitoring our hero's surface characteristics. The marks on his body initially appeared like veins, but closer inspection suggested an allergic reaction. Our hero opened his eyes, dazed and confused. A woman advised him against moving. Lighting a cigarette, she introduced herself as an unlicensed black market doctor, preferring to be called simply Doctor. She was keen to understand his condition, noting she had never seen symptoms like his. Urging him to recount the events in the basement, she expressed extreme interest in his case. Currently, our protagonist found himself in Brooklyn, where the temperature was a bone-chilling -29 degrees Celsius. Remarkably, our hero's body temperature was at 11.5 degrees Celsius, far below the known world record of 13.7 degrees for human survival. At such low temperatures, body tissues freeze and cellular destruction ensues, typically leading to hypothermia and death. After checking his temperature, she marveled at his survival. Our hero wondered inwardly if his ability was responsible, but had no time to dwell on this thought as he had an urgent plan to complete. Deciding to stand, he slipped and fell. Doctor reminded him that she had warned against moving due to his weakened state. She then asked him if he possessed a superpower, a question that shocked him. Feeling pressed for time, he dismissed her inquiry as a joke. She warned him not to underestimate her observational skills. Ignoring her warning, our hero attempted to use his powers, only to spit out blue blood instead of speeding up. Doctor asked if he was okay. Our hero, confused, couldn't understand why his acceleration power wasn't working now. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door, and DeLong and his men arrived. With urgency, she commanded him to rise quickly. Puzzled, he inquired about the situation and the identity of the person outside. Instead of providing answers, she insisted he remain lying down. Confused and anxious, he struggled to understand, but she emphasized that his survival depended on following her instructions. She directed him to stay put, close his eyes, and remain absolutely still, regardless of any noise he might hear. She opened the door, and DeLong entered, apologizing for the disturbance. He asked if he could come in to chat, to which she agreed. DeLong mentioned he had heard Resident 409 was receiving treatment there and had questions for him. The doctor informed DeLong that the person he was looking for had died from poisoning. Laying nearby, our hero recognized DeLong's voice and felt a surge of frustration. If only his acceleration ability worked, he could kill DeLong right there. DeLong, suspicious, asked if she was sure the person was dead, noting he thought he saw him blink. Menacingly, he held up a sharp weapon, suggesting the man might be playing dead. The doctor remained composed, but the tension in the room was palpable as DeLong moved closer to our hero, ready to test if he was truly lifeless. As DeLong was about to pierce our hero, the doctor suddenly slapped him across the face and asked if he was questioning her abilities. DeLong's subordinates erupted in anger, cursing at her and questioning if she had a death wish. To their shock, DeLong ordered them to stop and apologize to the doctor. Lighting her cigarette, he acknowledged that she had saved many of his men and admitted fault for doubting her. He implored her not to be angry but reminded her not to forget who supported her and her rundown clinic, urging her to respond to his offer soon. The doctor sighed, dismissing his words as nonsense. After DeLong left, the doctor told our hero to get up, acknowledging he likely had many questions. Our hero, confused about why DeLong wanted to kill him upon their first meeting, also wondered why the doctor chose to protect him. Before delving into these questions, he asked her where his clothes were. She responded incredulously, noting the drastic temperature drop to -40 degrees Celsius. In the basement, another man reflected on watching his father tend the furnace during his youth, initially determined not to end up like him but now seeing him as a hero for keeping them alive in the extreme cold. Another person reassured him that the weather would eventually improve, advising him not to dwell on negative thoughts about his father. DeLong joined the conversation, speculating that the government's silence suggested they may have given up, and wondering if the cold wave was divine punishment. Old Joe, tied up by DeLong, sarcastically questioned why DeLong wasn't punished for his sins if divine justice were real. Defending his actions, DeLong claimed he was maintaining order by exchanging heating for supplies, arguing it was a fair exchange. Old Joe criticized this as coercion, calling DeLong a monster. DeLong smirked, lamenting that the tenant in 409, our hero, seemed to have already died, otherwise, he could benefit from DeLong's order. Joe was shocked and saddened to hear about our hero's supposed death. Back in the doctor's apartment, she asked our hero if he was dressed. Our hero, struggling with the simple task due to his weakened state, told her he needed more time. After he finished, he asked her what it was all about. She responded by asking how long he believed he had been unconscious. He guessed 6 hours, but to his astonishment, she revealed it had been 6 days. She explained that during those 6 days, a lot had transpired. DeLong, she continued, controlled the entire heating system of the apartment and required residents to exchange supplies for the right to use it, otherwise, he would cut off their heating. Many residents had gone outside to find supplies, facing near certain death in the extreme cold. Recalling both the current and past timelines, our hero's anger flared, seeing DeLong as a monster in any era. Clenching his fist, he asked the doctor if there was a way to recover his strength. Surprised by his determination, she told him there was indeed a way, but it came with a condition. Running an underground clinic, she didn't do charity work, and thus asked if he could accept her terms. He asked the doctor what her condition was, stating that as long as he could do it, it would be done. Satisfied with his response, she grabbed his chin and revealed that she wanted him to become her research subject, allowing only her to study him. She assured him that her research wouldn't endanger his life, expressing her strong interest in him. With a smile, our hero accepted the deal. The doctor then explained that there was a special substance in his blood that she hadn't fully identified yet. She discovered that these substances absorbed thermal radiation and converted it into energy usable by the human body. This phenomenon only occurred when he lacked heat. Essentially, his body now had a medium that could store energy, and his current weakness was due to extreme hunger. Upon hearing this, our hero asked if eating a large meal would restore his strength. The doctor confirmed, but added that the amount of food required would be substantial, and she didn't have enough at the moment. Our hero, smirking, reassured her that he had a solution. He had anticipated needing supplies and had previously stocked up at the supermarket. As long as he could safely return to his room, he would be fine. After the bad guys left, our hero sneaked back to his apartment and used his fingerprint to open the door. Inside, he was shocked to find the heating had been cut off, turning his room into an icebox. He cursed DeLong for this, realizing it could freeze someone to death. Searching through his supplies, he found the highest calorie food, chocolate. Though bad memories surfaced, he consumed it but noticed no immediate effect. Determined, he increased the dose, indulging in a hearty meal. Suddenly, intense pain surged through him, and he was overwhelmed by an insatiable craving for heat. It felt as though he was on the brink of death, collapsing to his knees and gasping for breath. At that moment, the two adversaries from earlier approached his room, surprised to find it unlocked. They speculated that DeLong had planned to cut our hero's fingers to gain entry. Their surprise turned to admiration at the sight of abundant supplies. Meanwhile, our hero underwent a strange transformation, his once blue veins now pulsed a menacing red. Rising to his feet, he confronted the intruders, who demanded to know his identity and if he had opened the door. Elsewhere, the doctor prepared to delve into the final simulation report, eager to uncover the truth about our hero's condition. She noted the reversal of the active state proved troublesome, affecting neural activity and risking a dangerous glycogen imbalance. Back in the room, the two men berated our hero, claiming ownership of his supplies, but he returned their gaze with a menacing glare, a crimson aura enveloping him. At that moment, he lost control of his own body. 72 hours earlier, the doctor had been in the basement, wondering what had caused our hero's transformation. She noticed something, picked it up, and placed it in her bag. Continuing her exploration, she discovered a monitor recording everything that had occurred. Realizing she needed to uncover the truth, she decided to head to the security room. However, before she could act, the apartment's speakers crackled to life, and a voice instructed residents to ration their supplies efficiently to avoid wastage, as they now had to pay a small compensation for heating. As this announcement echoed through the building, two individuals were seen trespassing and confronting Old Joe. Despite his weight, the inhabitants of the building remembered DeLong's warning to keep an eye on the boiler. As we zoom in, it's revealed that DeLong is the one speaking into the microphone. Confusion ripples through the building's residents, who question whether this is a prank and speculate about Old Joe's involvement. However, one resident notes that the voice doesn't sound like Old Joe's. Undeterred, DeLong continues his address, emphasizing the gravity of the situation. He ominously hovers his finger near the heating button and decides to temporarily shut it off to conserve resources. After his nefarious act, he erupts into maniacal laughter. Meanwhile, Mo appears. Someone dressed similarly to Mo inquires if he harbors hatred. We then glimpse into Mo's mind, portraying him as a prisoner interrogated by the red energy, which questions his hatred towards DeLong. As DeLong's name is mentioned, Mo's eyes flare with revenge, and he defiantly confirms his hatred for him. Grabbing the neck of one of the men near him, Mo suddenly incinerates the man from within. However, instead of seeing the man's face, Mo sees DeLong's face, taunting him about the taste of human flesh. Fueled by rage, Mo tosses the man out of the room, sending him crashing through a wall and landing near other people. They look on in confusion, fear, and shock at the skeletal figure lying in front of them, apparently fallen from the fourth floor. The deceased man's friend, bewildered by what had just happened, questions our hero's identity and even considers if our hero might be an alien. Seeing the red aura surrounding our hero, he curses inwardly, realizing he stands no chance against him, and decides to go all out. Leaping into the air to strike, the friend is met with our hero's calm smirk. Our hero, still envisioning DeLong's face, dodges the attack effortlessly. As the man attacks repeatedly, our hero taunts him, easily evading each strike. Finally, our hero decides not to dodge. With a fierce look, he dashes towards the man, cutting him in half with his hand and speed. As the split body of the man lays on the floor, someone arrives at the scene, calling out our hero's name. Our hero turns to see his ex-girlfriend, Xiao Ming, pointing a gun at him. She shoots, but since our hero only sees the people he hates in this form, he doesn't realize that the girl is not Xiao Ming, but actually Doctor. Doctor reassures him not to worry because it's just insulin. Our hero starts losing consciousness and falls into her arms. Doctor explains that the substance she injected him with was meant to dissipate the excess heat in his body. However, something extraordinary happens. The cold room fills with greenery, leaving her confused and wondering what is going on. Hunger, the catalyst of human evil deeds like cannibalism and war, has a dark history in humanity. With the development of agricultural technology, human society has gradually tended towards stability. However, hunger has never truly left. In this icebound world, farming is almost an impossible feat. Hunger remains a catalyst for evil deeds, a dark history of humanity that is about to repeat itself. But there are always exceptions. And that exception is our protagonist's powers. Looking at Mo's unconscious body, Jo apologizes, explaining that she had to put him to sleep again, even though he had woken up from a long coma not long ago. After glancing around, she wonders what is going on with the plants and greenery now filling the room. Deciding to test it, she picked a tomato and took a bite. The softness and rich flavor sent shivers down her spine, thrilling her with its taste. She exclaimed that the abundance of food in the room could feed everyone in the entire apartment, her excitement palpable. Meanwhile, outside the building, the weather was brutal. Despite this, two people ventured out. Though they wore heavy jackets and layers of sweaters, they still trembled from the cold. The guy asked the girl how she was feeling and if she could hold on. She replied that she could, and there should be no problem. Checking his jacket, he remembered he had another chocolate. However, she insisted she didn't need it. The guy grumbled about nearly losing the chocolate to DeLong, whom he called a bastard. After searching his jacket, he realized it was missing. The girl reminded him that they had given it to their daughter that morning. The man paused, smiled, and giggled. Out of nowhere, a monstrous creature appeared, grabbing the man and using its grotesque mouth to eat him in front of his wife. Blood splattered on her face as the monster, with a chilling voice, remarked that women were more delicious, indicating she was its next target. Frozen in shock, the girl struggled to comprehend the horror in front of her. Suddenly, a voice shouted at her not to space out. She turned to see a man standing atop an unfinished building, gesturing for her to run if she wanted to live. Without hesitation, she sprinted, but her pace was slow, and the monster's hand nearly caught her. In a desperate move, she jumped, narrowly avoiding the monster's attack. The force of the creature's strike shattered the ground beneath them, causing her to stumble repeatedly. Injured and on the floor, she sat crying, awaiting her fate. Just then, the man atop the building prepared a Molotov cocktail, lit it, and hurled it at the monster. The flammable liquid ignited upon impact, setting the monster's left side ablaze. Seizing the opportunity, the girl ran as the monster writhed in pain. Nearing the building, she made the mistake of stopping to look back, noticing the creature wasn't following her. She found an elevator, thinking it was her salvation. However, the monster suddenly appeared behind her, looking as menacing as ever despite its injuries. Terrified, she cried and repeatedly pressed the elevator button, urging it to hurry. The man from earlier shouted for her to close her eyes, confusing her. Bright lights then flooded the building, a sight the monster detested. The man, exuding coolness and resembling Kurt Cobain, smirked confidently and played his guitar. The sonar waves of his rock music resonated powerfully through the building, exacerbating the monster's discomfort. The woman, Dorothy Perez, found a glimmer of hope amid the chaos. Dorothy had always dreamed of becoming a doctor during her childhood, but fate led her down a different path, and she eventually became a nurse. It was during her time in the hospital that she met Matt, who was heavily bandaged up. As their eyes met, both blushing, it was love at first sight. They soon got married and later welcomed their daughter Maggie into the world. Eventually, they decided to move into a new apartment, unaware of the trials that awaited them. A sudden freeze enveloped their world, thugs seized control of their apartment, and monstrous creatures appeared. Dorothy found herself questioning reality, but nothing prepared her for the sight of a man with just a guitar subduing a monster. The man, still rocking hard, annoyed the monster even more as the noise drove it crazy. Leaning in to kill him, the man smirked and then pressed a button with his leg. This triggered his trap. Numerous rebars dropped from above, piercing the monster's body and burying it under the fallen metal. The monster struggled momentarily but eventually died, bringing the ordeal to an end. Dorothy fell to her knees in relief. Though the cost was high, her husband was dead. The man reached out his hand to help her up, but she realized her hand was covered in mucus and hesitated. The man, an epitome of calm and confidence, reassured her that everything was okay. Moments later, Dorothy sat near a fire with a gloomy face, gazing at a family portrait hanging from her necklace. The man returned, gave her a tissue, and paid his respects to her husband, then sat next to her. Lighting a cigarette, he uttered a somber quote, "Dust to dust, ashes to ashes. Besides mourning the dead, we also need to protect the living, right?" Dorothy looked at him with a confused expression, and he, realizing how awkward his words were, fell silent. After a moment, he attempted to introduce himself, but Dorothy beat him to it, stating her name first. Nervously, he introduced himself as Corbin. She thanked him for saving her life, to which he simply replied, "You're welcome." Curious, Dorothy asked if he was also out to find supplies. Corbin explained that his situation was a bit complicated. He then told her to hold on because he had something to show her. Taking out a picture, he explained that he came from Seattle looking for a friend. However, upon arriving here, he was trapped by the cold wave. Showing her the picture, he pointed to his friend, the one with the hat, stating they played in a band together in high school. Dorothy recognized the guy who lived in room 409, our hero. Suddenly, a deafening rumble shook the building, accompanied by a cacophony of noise from outside. They decided to investigate, only to be met with a scene reminiscent of a scaled-down apocalypse. The once quiet apartment complex had turned into a chaotic battleground, with people scrambling for safety and the sound of distant explosions.